Hey there, welcome to Authentically Raw. I'm your host, Jamie Darris. Becky Tilley, welcome to the Authentically Raw podcast. How are you?
I'm very well. Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so excited about our conversation because I have so much to learn today, and I know our audience does too. So just a brief introduction, and I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and I'm going to dive in. I have so many good questions for you. First and foremost, you're a mom of 3 kids and a wife, and your journey in life was interrupted when you found out, along with your youngest 2 children, that you had a rare chromosome disorder or syndrome. You'll have to clarify that for us. It's called Koolen-de Vries Syndrome. So first, tell us a little bit about what Koolen-de Vries Syndrome is.
Well, I never actually heard of it myself. It's still even considered now a new disorder that not many have heard of. The first diagnosis was in 2006.
Wow.
So even if I go to the doctors, they'll say, oh, how do you spell it? And they won't know what it is. So it's a real unknown. And I only found out, as you said, after the birth of my son, Josh. Mm-hmm. I had one that is considered neurotypical child, absolutely beautiful, normal, healthy pregnancy, hitting all the milestones. And then I fell pregnant with Josh, and again, the pregnancy was going smoothly. There were no red flags, no reasons to be worried. And when he was born very limp, like a floppy baby. So he was rushed off to NICU to help stabilize his breathing. Once they got his breathing under control, I kind of hoped and prayed that we'd be on our way home. And his limbs were still floppy. And they actually said it looks like he's got floppy baby syndrome. And the medical term for that is hypertonia, which is weak muscle tone. And it makes feeding difficult. It makes the limbs go weak and limp. And they said there's a lot of genetic causes for that. So we're going to need to take some time to run tests to identify what's caused this in him. And 2 weeks into that, COVID hit. So the pandemic was going on. And altogether, he spent 34 days in NICU, having lots of investigations done, consultations, blood tests. And it was really the most traumatizing, I would say, time of my life, because I just had no idea what was going on. There was no inkling something like that was going to happen. It was just all came at me at once. Mm-hmm. And it was only 18 months later, when I was 4 months pregnant with my 3rd child, that my geneticist called and said we finally got that diagnosis for Josh. Yeah.
And it was the Koolen-de Vries Syndrome.
Yeah.
Right? So describe what that is.
So it's a rare chromosome disorder. It can affect everyone differently. As with many disorders and diseases, there's a spectrum for things like autism, for example. It affects everybody differently. I had learning difficulties at school. I was in special education for maths and English all through my school years, right till I left to go to work. And I always felt like I was behind my peers, both at work and at school. I never felt like I could keep up with anybody. I just learned in a different way to most people. But I was a really early talker. And my 2 children both have speech and language therapy. So, yes, I've got a 3-year-old. Josh is 3 now. And his favorite words are higher and here. And yeah. They're his 3 prime words, and he says them with all the energy and excitement in the world behind those 3 words, which is just so precious. And Avery as well, she's still kind of babbling at the moment, and she's 2, so I'm doing the same sign languages as I am with Josh to support her. And they were both diagnosed with hypertonia. So Avery was diagnosed with KdVS as well. Because even if I backtrack to when I was given the diagnosis, they first said Joshua has Koolen-de Vries Syndrome. Okay. And I thought, right, okay, take that in, as in, I wonder what that is. And then they said, and secondly, he inherited it from you, Becky. And that silence was almost deafening after that. I just
Yes.
kind of took a lot of my head around.
You received this information when you are 4 months pregnant with Avery.
Yeah. And
So,
when we thought everything was fine, we thought everything was good. He was walking at a year old. He was walking before I was as a baby. I didn't walk till I was nearly 2. So, and he was happy, content. All the doctors said what a happy chappy he was, and no concerns at all. So we thought, you know what, maybe this wasn't anything to worry about, and he is just going to be fine. So it was such a shock. And she said there is a 50% chance. She said, I'm glad you told me you're pregnant, because there's a 50% chance your third child will have it. So we'll need to do extra monitoring, had to have MRI scans for Avery to check what her brain development was like. So it was a lot more, there was a lot more scans involved this time with Avery.
So she was diagnosed with it as well.
Yeah.
What was birth like? Was it a healthy birth? Was she?
Yes. It was much better than Josh's, but it still took time to get feeding. She had to go back into hospital once more because her breathing wasn't great. So there was some similarities, but it wasn't to the same extreme that Josh's was, because that was 34 days. And she did have, we thought she would take a lot longer physical development wise, because to lift her head up, it took her way longer than it did for Josh. So we were really concerned, because they said she had central and peripheral hypotonia. So it could take longer for her to develop, but she's full of love and life, running around everywhere. You would never know, looking at them both running off together at the park, that they had hypotonia at all. You wouldn't guess it, honestly.
Right. So tell me, is it more of a learning disability, or what exactly, how would you describe Koolen-de Vries syndrome?
Yeah. Well, for me, I would say developmental delays and learning difficulties, because that's how it's impacted myself and my kids. For others, it can be, there's a 50% chance that anyone with KdVS will also have epilepsy.
Okay.
And thankfully, again, count my blessings, we haven't had that. But also it can affect your heart and kidneys, can cause issues. And there's a whole long list now. There's a real rabbit hole you could go down, because the more time goes on, the more they add different things. And I don't take the time, because I've always had anxiety disorder as well, which could be attributed to KdVS, maybe not. I don't examine and take in all the signs and symptoms and obsess over them. I just take each day at a time. I celebrate all the good things and the blessings that we have, and I don't take a single thing for granted to do with my kids' health and development. I hone in on every single good thing, so I take that as a positive in terms of how it's altered my mindset. Like, I seek out the good in things that most would take for granted, put it that way.
Exactly. So how has it impacted your life personally? Because how old were you when you were basically diagnosed? I mean, it seems like it all kind of came at once, really, with your son and you and your daughter. So how old were you at that time?
I was 38.
38.
Yes.
So I bet a lot of different things. I can imagine so many different light bulbs going off in your head at that time.
Yeah.
So much probably made sense for you.
It did.
Back at your life, and yet it probably also proposed so many more questions going forward. So with this information, what did you do? How did it impact your life? And did it, what kind of turns did it? What different paths did it lead you down on your journey?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that blindsided me was guilt. A guilt like I'd never known, because all I could do was think of all the blood tests. And, even when we were home, we were there every week to have more bloods done. And he would always scream and cry when they were doing it. And I just thought everything that he struggled with and suffered with, and all the time he was in NICU and I had to come home, I thought, that was all because of me. And I could rationalize it now and say, I didn't choose to have this. I just genetically have this disorder. but it took me so very long to get there, to that place where I could have acceptance for myself that I have that syndrome and that I didn't choose to pass it on. And I just basically decided to, when I found out I had hypertonia, this was before KdVS, I decided to look up hope stories of hypertonia. Because I wanted to find, because I'm always someone that loved to read about inspiring people, listen to inspiring podcasts, watch inspiring movies. I always wanted to, luckily, I always looked to people that overcame adversity. I would enjoy seeking out hope stories just for life in general, not for anything specific. But I thought I've got a specific thing to look for now. And I found them, and I found parents that had defied the doctor's odds of how their kids would turn out, that they just kept believing in them, kept supporting them. The kids were all thriving in their own unique ways and achieving amazing things that the doctors said they never would. And I was like, that is what I want to absorb and dwell on and think about, these kinds of stories, not the horror stories of everything that could go wrong, because I don't have control ultimately of what their life is going to pan out like. I don't have control over that. But I do have control over my mindset about it and what I pour into them to help support their development. So I got soaked in all the hope stories that I could. And then once we were diagnosed with KdVS and I learned how new it was and rare, I thought, wow, I've lived with this for 38 years, so maybe I can shed some light on it for people and I can share what I've achieved, that I'm a wife, like you said, and I've got 3 kids, and that I achieved a performing arts diploma from college, that I had that. So I just thought of, what things can I say that someone could read and get hope from? So I kind of wanted to pay it forward, all the hope stories that I read. I thought, I want to be that for someone else. And then I joined these KdVS support groups on Facebook. I shared a picture of me and Josh and said, he was walking at 1 and he was, diagnosed with hypertonia. He's a really happy little boy. And then I explained that I was happily married and beautiful kids and that I'd been to college and all that kind of thing. And the response I got was really overwhelmingly positive. And they were just so thankful that I'd found them. And they had so many questions to ask that I was so glad to answer, because it gave me a purpose for the syndrome that I had. It wasn't just at face value anymore, because a lot of people always tell me that if it was them, they'd have just got on with life. Like, you just get on with it. And it's like, but you were like finding people all over the world to share it with, you know what I mean? And it's like, and that's the thing, because funny enough, I always wanted to be one of those people. That's why I'd always read about them. And I was like, oh, I'd love to be that for somebody one day. And then this was my chance to be, this was my opportunity. So that's where it started, in the rare community. And I just expanded further and further out, shared rare blogs for magazines and websites, all this kind of thing. And then I started my own support groups, my own UK KdVS support group, international rare disorder support groups. So any disease or disorder, they could join my group, kind of thing. So yeah, it all began in the rare realm, really. To be that supposed to be.
I can really understand and relate, though, having that mom guilt in the beginning.
Yeah. It's severe.
Moms, I think, I don't know what it is with us. We find everything to feel guilty about, don't we? And we need to stop. We need to just stop all of that. But I can see how, your baby is suffering. He's getting poked, blood tests and things like that. It's hard to look at it and be like, but you didn't know. You didn't know. Now you do, right? You would never intentionally, cause this on him, or both your children. But I think if you had known, you wouldn't have had these 2 children. And, now you look at these kids and they are thriving. And look at you. You have lived 38 years with this before you knew. How much you did accomplish with your disabilities. But now you have these 2 kids, from the get-go that this is what's happening. This is what's going on. And you can help them through that. Your parents didn't know. So they didn't have tools, and you have these tools to help your kids. And if that should erase all guilt, Becky, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
No guilt.
Yeah, completely.
Because think about though, if you would have known, you would probably be a mom to one.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
By having these two children, by having Josh and Avery, you not only found out your own diagnosis and you can change the trajectory of your life, but you are bringing awareness to so many other people with this syndrome, for one.
Yeah.
And look at what you can do now to help your own kids. I mean, you're helping yourself, you're helping your own kids, and you can help so many other people.
Yes.
And had it not been for the birth of Josh, you may still not have any idea. And I can only imagine having, I mean, we all have our things. I can remember, feeling, I don't think there's one person that at some time in their childhood is sitting in a classroom feeling like, am I the only one that doesn't know what's going on? Or, I'm behind, or I'm not smart, or, I mean, we all have these things, even in adulthood.
Yeah.
And knowing now, though, and looking back, look what I've done with this learning disability and this rare chromosome syndrome, and look at what I can do with it now. And I'm sure, like you said, if it was only, from 2006, many more tools and things will become available to help you and other people.
Yes.
With,
absolutely.
What do you call it? KdS? Is that what you call it?
Oh, KdVS.
KdVS.
Yeah, nearly there. Yeah.
Which I will spell. I want to make sure I spell for the audience, just in case someone does want to Google this or research it. It is Koolen and then Evries. So it's Koolen-de Vries Syndrome.
Yes.
Because even you mentioning things about learning disabilities and, in the spectrum of autism and epilepsy, I even start to think of people I know with children that have some of these things. And you even talk about, suffering from anxiety. And how could you not feel some of that when you're always feeling, behind, or you're not understanding things, or I don't think, I mean, that's a natural, I would say, symptom of it. But when you realize that there's a reason that you're feeling this anxiety, you can do something with it. Okay, I have a little compassion for myself. This is
100%.
And you can work through that. So I'm curious, with your children, how do you approach milestones and things? Because I think with any parent looking at their kid, we all have these milestones, and it's very hard to put our blinders on and look at just our kids and their own situations without looking around a little bit and seeing the other kids walk. There's some kids that are walking at 8 or 9 months.
And
18 months. And these are all within, these realms that are normal, and, with speech and just all of these different things. So how do you know how to navigate that part of it?
That's a really, really good question, actually, because when I first had Isabella, who's my firstborn, and again, I was going along to all the regular play groups, and any kind of conversation, like you said, that we'd all have as mums, like we my daughter just started talking. You're like, oh, mine's still babbling, okay. And then you were like on the health visitor phone saying, don't know if there's a developmental delay going on, but she's still not talking yet. Just, she's still within range, but don't worry. And it's just that natural thing, like you say, you're all at play group and you've got some crawling or some like running circles around them, and it's all different. But I think you all kind of you naturally fall into that as mums. You're like, oh, you're talking already, wow. And then you go home thinking, why are you talking? Like getting all the books out, do you know what I mean? But funny enough, I think once I was diagnosed and I look back at my own childhood and thought it was so freaking hard, as in developmentally, to be so behind everyone else. And I thought, and weirdly, it really eased my mind about Josh and Avery. I thought, I'm not even gonna stress about that. I'm just gonna enjoy it, because even when we went to foundation, which is like Josh is starting in foundation next year, which is, you know, like preschool. And we went there for like a stay and play morning. And basically, you know, it was time for us to go. And I said, oh, Josh, say thank you to the teacher. And he said that for thank you. And all the other parents were watching. And I just beamed happily and proudly as we left, you know, like it doesn't worry me. And he was going, and like car, I know he's making dinosaur noises kind of thing. And he's 3. And I say, yeah, Josh, dinosaurs. And I just behave like he's any other 3-year-old. You know, I don't try to like or, you know, or get embarrassed or anything. I just enjoy him, and I'm a happy, confident mum. I say hello to everyone else, ask about the kids just like any other normal mum would. I don't behave any differently to what I did with Bella, put it that way. And then when my daughter Isabella had her parents' evening at school, and she said, oh, you know, there's some children ahead of her with writing. She's writing, but there are some children ahead. Is that okay? And I just said, that's fine. I just said, Bella's making progress. And that to me is all that matters, that she puts in her best effort, and the fact she's moving at her own pace is fine by me. But then explained about the KdVS and Josh and Avery. And I just said, you know, they are happy, healthy, thriving kids who are developing in their own way and time. They're the smiliest children you could ever imagine. And I said, and I'm content with that. As long as I know I've got speech and language therapy in place, like I did, I got the physio for hypertonia. I'm not ignorant to their needs and delays. I make sure that there's always the right professionals on board and getting the advice that I need to support them. But if I'm doing that, if I'm doing all the things as their mum that I know to do, to encourage them and build them up and nurture them, then I'm good. You know, that then the rest will be what it will be. And I've made my peace with that.
Right. And I think that is huge, because the last thing you want your kids to feel is that they are, you know, different in a way that they're always going to be behind and they have to catch up. Because with or without this syndrome, I think it's really easy for kids, I mean, just anyone, different ages of our lives, to feel that way.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
And it doesn't help you. It only keeps you back, right? And one thing I caught is I can picture Josh leading, kind of like, you know, you were doing this motion. It's almost like the kisses sort of thing for a goodbye.
Yeah, it's like that. Yeah.
Voices. So, and I caught myself even in this trap, because this is with my firstborn. I've learned, you know, I have 4, so I've learned as I go on.
Oh, wow.
How many parents, though, when their kids don't give the automatic response when they're asked something, anything by an adult, whether it's like at a school or
true.
If they are kind of a little bit hesitant, how many parents jump in and answer for their kids? And it is to maybe just save their kid from feeling uncomfortable or embarrassed, or it is the worst thing you can do.
Yes.
I admit,
so true. That is so true. Yeah, I agree.
And it teaches them to just sit there and kind of clam up, and mom will come in and save and rescue and answer for me. And it stops them from being, you know, having their own voice. It's so funny. You just let him. He answered how he wanted to. And how many parents dive in and answer for their kids? If he wants to answer and just dinosaur answers, it is what it is, right? Kids that freedom to be just authentic and fun and creative in who they are. And I think that regardless if your child has, you know, something that limits them or not, as a parent, how often we do that to our kids. But honestly, I right as I said that, I thought of even adults. How many times as adults, I mean, really look at your relationships and people, if you're with someone and someone asks a question that is even uncomfortable to someone else, you ever found yourself kind of diving in and answering, almost like rescuing for that person? I see that all the time, and I'm guilty. Why don't we do that? I just do that.
Completely. Like fill the void, quick. Yeah, completely.
Anyway, that was an observation. So you are a writer as well. So tell me. Tell us about that.
Well, I've always loved writing, even as a kid in special ed class. Just writing was my thing. They would do word tests, and I'd be putting my hand up saying I know what that word is. I tick it off my list and sit there feeling all proud of myself. And I'd be given books to read, and I would love doing that. I'd go home and write thank you letters to my mum and dad, or whatever, like any reason I could find to write. I'd write my own little books and draw cartoons to go with them, and it wasn't written perfectly, but it was writing and it was pictures, and I was already making books when I was a little kid at like middle school. And so it's so funny, because for so many years I completely lost that. I only wrote, to sign something at the bank or whatever, like anyone else does, really. Like when they're forced to write, they'll write something down, or have to write their shopping list. So I got like that for a long time. And then later in life, I think a lot of people started saying how much they appreciated how encouraging I was to them. Like, oh, you've always got an encouraging word to say. And I just thought, and when Facebook came around, I thought, oh, I could like share them on social media so everyone could get a message of encouragement from me, kind of thing. And friends and family would appreciate it, and I would send texts and things like that. But I never really did anything more than that until the KdVS diagnosis. And I thought, I'll ask the KdVS Foundation if I can share my story, so that way the whole KdVS community will hear it and can be encouraged by it. And after I did that blog, I was gone. I've done 19 blogs now for different magazines.
And book though, right? You have a book?
And a book, yes. And a book after, yes. Yeah, which was my dream, which was like childhood dream to have my own book. So, yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your book.
Well, it's called Thrive Rare. And I went through a lot of different ideas of what that book would actually look like. And I got to a point where, like I said, I'd done a lot. I did 19 blogs for rare organizations. So for the rare community, people with disorders like me, or with kids with disorders like mine. And I just thought, I really want to go mainstream. I really want more and more people to know they're not alone. Because as you said, all of us compare ourselves to other people and feel like we're less than someone else for whatever reason. Maybe they're more successful than you are. Maybe they're better looking. Maybe they're earning more. Fill in the blank. We all have that comparison trap we fall into. And we can all feel sometimes we can go somewhere or be with someone and feel like, oh, I don't belong here, feeling like a bit of a misfit. Do you know what I mean? And I realized it's a universal thing. The things I grew up struggling with, everyone deals with in some shape or form through their lifetime. So I thought, so why limit my book to only the KdVS community or only those with rare disorders, when anyone in the world can relate to feeling like they don't belong in this world and trying to find their purpose, and mine wasn't a conventional purpose, in terms of what I've done and the communities I've created. And I decided to call it Thrive Rare, because that's my goal in life, is to have KdVS and challenge stereotypes of what someone with a syndrome would live like or think like, or, or achieve, to actually challenge that and say, actually, we're just as capable as anyone else of achieving amazing things. We're all unique. No one should be, stereotyped, because we're all individuals. We've all got our own strengths and weaknesses. We've all got our own calling in life and purpose and passion that we can use to make an impact. And I just wanted everybody to know that, and to know that they weren't alone, regardless of their background or what they started or the diagnosis or labels people have put on them, that they get to define ultimately who they are and what their life is like.
Exactly. I love that.
Yeah.
It's empowering to know that really the limits are the limits we place on ourselves, and we're the one that can
100%.
peel that off, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Becky, this has been such an empowering conversation, and I thank you for your time. And yeah, I guess, is there any, you are very empowering just looking at your Instagram feed. I love all the little quotes and things about yourself and just the transformation and the growth that you share with everyone is so inspiring. Is there any, I like to call it kind of like your mantra. What is your driving force behind, or your mission? What is your, if you could kind of sum it up, I know, right? In an elevator pitch, one line. Just to leave people with.
It's just to, as my book says, embracing your uniqueness. And that is embracing a thing about you that is like no one else in the world. That's those standalone things that make you who you are, not like your peer group, not like any other labels or groups there are out there in the world, just that those things that make you who you are, the qualities that you have, the way you think, the way you speak, you know, the gift you have, and to just celebrate that, because I think it can be I think people can be so afraid of it to actually say, this is me, this isn't this group, or this isn't this label, this is who I am as an individual. This is my thing. This is what I do. This is how I think. And it's not like anyone else. And I would just love to see more and more people stepping up and embracing that with courage and with conviction, and just using it to make an impact in the world, a positive one.
To me, it sounds like embracing your authenticity. And I
absolutely
love that, of course.
Yes. Yes, it is exactly that. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to Authentically Raw. I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me an email, jamie@jamiebarris.com, and let me know what episodes resonate with you and why. Are you a people pleaser? If so, I need your help. Please, I'm writing a book about people pleasing titled The People Pleaser's Guide to Pissing People Off, to improve your relationships, especially the one you have with yourself. And I'm looking for personal stories of how people pleasing has impacted your life, or sucked the life out of you. Maybe people pleasing has held you back, caused you to feel resent, regret, anger, powerlessness, or just plain exhaustion. Let me know how it's impacted your life. Who knows, maybe your story will inspire my writing and grace the pages in some shape or form in this handy dandy little guide. Also, if you enjoy the Authentically Raw content, please support the show by following and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. Simply scroll down through the episodes and you will see where to do so. Want to learn more about life coaching? Head over to my website, jamiebarris.com, and check it out. You can also follow me on social media at Jamie Barris for lots of inspiration and empowerment. One last thing, I'm rooting for you. Be real, be raw, be authentic.